On this episode of the Heat Check, we have a very special guest here to break down all things LA Lakers. Let's welcome Claire Lune, musician and writer, one of the best followers on NBA Twitter, at Claire MPLS. Give her a follow. Check out her band also on Tiny Deaths on Spotify. She also writes for The Guardian. She's here to tell us whether the Lakers' recent form is going to continue, whether they'll fall back to earth, and whether Anthony Davis might just be the 2022-2023 MVP. How did you get into music?
Well, so music I've been doing since I was a little kid. I've been writing songs since I was like in kindergarten, and I started playing music professionally in high school. So that is like, been the kind of through line in my life. I always knew that's what I wanted to do from the time I was really young. And yeah, it just sort of is like, I've said this before, but I feel like writing songs is sort of just the way I like synthesize the human experience. Like it's just the way I deal with my feelings and like, deal with existential dread and all of it. So I don't really remember a time before I wrote songs.
It's funny. You don't know this about me, and I didn't know this about you until I was doing some prep about you. But me and you both were in a hip hop group.
No way.
Two white girls in
Yeah.
a hip hop group.
Everybody needs that, right? That's like, there's a real shortage. That's what everyone is clamoring for. They're like, you know what I wish there was? More white girls in hip hop groups.
From White
There's a real
City,
dearth of that.
right? You were in Minneapolis. I was in
Mhm.
Portland.
Yeah, those are the hip hop capitals. Although honestly, there's an amazing hip hop scene in Minneapolis because there's like rhyme sayers and like, like I mean they are kind of known for it a little bit, but
we got
yeah.
Amine.
Oh, yeah. I saw him shopping at a grocery store in Malibu once. And I was like, oh, hey, Amine. He had like a cart full of junk food. It was really funny.
So that's really interesting to me because that's not really your genre now. But
no, not at all.
And I don't even know. And if you don't want to talk about this, we don't have to because it's not really, I couldn't really find anything about it on your profile.
Yeah.
And it was like, so like in the like micro print, right? It was like Claire Lune in a hip hop group called The Chalice.
Yep.
The Chalice with Lizzo.
Yeah.
With Lizzo.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I absolutely will talk about it. I just like I don't know. I feel like first of all, it kind of feels like another lifetime because we stopped being a group in 2013. So it's like almost 10 years ago.
Right.
And I feel like I've done a lot since then. And I feel like I've honestly been like several people since then in some ways. Like I was in my early 20s. It's just like such a different time in my life. But yeah, I mean, I loved it. It was a really fun group. I mean, obviously like any band I'm sure could tell you, like there were for sure ups and downs. And like, especially in, like a group of 20 something women, there's like plenty of drama as I would imagine is pretty obvious. But besides that, it was a blast. Like we had so much fun and, it was all of our first taste of sort of like any level of success. Like we had like national management and we went on tour and like that sort of stuff. And none of us had ever done that before. So I have super fond memories. Like it was great. I was never super into the music, to be honest. It wasn't really my vibe. I felt sort of like I was like playing a part or something, like acting almost. Because it was very, I would say it's kind of similar to like what Lizzo's music is now. It's very like bombastic, sort of like I'm gonna go out in the town with my girls, like kind of music. And my music, if you've ever heard what I do now, is like basically the exact opposite of that. It's like very like moody and contemplative and like just not that at all. And I had a lot of fun kind of like trying on that like role, but it just never really felt like true to me. So it wasn't rewarding in the same way that releasing music is for me now because I didn't really feel like me. I felt like I was like acting kind of.
Yeah, that's a really interesting space because what I had to do, what I did, I was with a guy and we were in a group and like I wasn't dating like guys that were drug dealers, but I was talking about it, like there's
Yeah.
we're taking first class trips and like, I'll hold your chain while you're in jail. And I was like
Oh my
16.
God.
Yeah, I was like 16. I'll send you it. I was like 16, 17 years old, right at this
Yeah.
point. But that was, I think, you're just kind of trying to make music and trying to be popular and trying to be seen. And then
Yeah.
you sort of realize, I think, as an evolution to you, maybe this is how you feel, maybe you don't, evolution as a person, as an artist, as a
Yeah.
creative, like it's not really fun if you're not doing it how you want to do it, and who you are and what
Yeah.
resonates with the things that you actually do.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me at the time, it was a really good lesson because I ended up in that group because I was sort of, when I moved back to Minneapolis, originally it was supposed to be for like 6 months. It was not supposed to be for a long time. And it ended up being 7 years. And I knew people in the hip hop scene just like through social life. And so I sort of got my foot in the scene, like dipped my toe in of music in that scene by just like singing hooks on like rappers' songs and stuff. Like that's just sort of like was my calling card. And then I met Lizzo and Lauren, who's her now DJ, because we were like three of the only women I would see around at like, rap shows and stuff. And they asked me to sing on one song they were working on, and that one song ended up getting played on the radio locally in like heavy rotation. And so we just kind of like got offered shows to play based off of that, and based off of that we started writing more songs so that we would have things to play at the shows. And everything about my career up until that point, from like how I ended up in hip hop to how I ended up in that group, it all felt very like passive in a way. Like I was busting my ass, but I didn't feel like any of it was like, I had no vision for my career. I had no vision for the music I was making. I was sort of just like, oh, I guess I'll just do this thing because it just like, this is where my path is leading me and like this is falling in my lap. And Tiny Desk, which is the music I'm doing now, was sort of my first time ever really being like, I want to make really intentional music that sounds exactly like the kind of music I want to listen to. And I honestly didn't ever even occur to me until I started doing what I do now that I could do that. Like I really didn't feel empowered in that way. And I kind of just felt like that's how careers go, is just like opportunities come to you and you mold yourself into something that fits them. And then you go on to the next thing. So I think I had to like grow up, and I had to like learn that you can and should be intentional about your career.
How did you get from, okay, I'm making the music that I want to make, but also you grew up in New York, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you became a Laker fan. So how do you get in from music to, becoming this sort of an important part of, I think, if somebody told me that you work for the Ringer, I wouldn't be surprised, right? Like you're kind of a part of the sort of stratosphere of it. How did those opportunities come to be? And how
Man,
did your fandom come to be?
it's so weird, honestly, that I work in NBA media now, because if you had told me that even like 10 years ago, I would have been like, you're insane. Like I was absolutely, first of all, I want to like be completely clear about this. The obnoxious artsy kid that's like, what's a sport? Like sports ball. Like I was like that. Like I hate those people. And I was totally that. I was such a little dickhead. And I was just on tour with Tiny Desk, and my drummer was really into basketball, mind you, way less into it than I am now. I've far surpassed him in knowledge at this point, but like he had the playoffs on in the background, and in our green room on tour, and I just started watching with him, and I got totally obsessed. And just my personality type as a crazy person, I guess, is that like when I get into something, I get really into it, and I like want to know everything about it, and I get, like super invested. And so I just went from 0 to 100 and just started consuming so much NBA and just got like really into it. And obviously very quickly I surpassed interest in, as far as all my friends, like all my friends were like, shut up, I don't want to hear you talk about basketball. So I kind of just like ended up on Twitter, like to just tweet into the void about basketball, because I was boring all my like artsy friends to tears. And that's how I kind of got in the NBA Twitter like community, I guess. And then when I moved to LA in 2017, a lot of my NBA Twitter friends became like in real life friends, because a lot of them live here. And for a long time, I was like the only one of my friends without a podcast and who wasn't working in media. Like I can't overstate this. Like I got so into basketball that the only people who could like stand to like hang out with me and talk about basketball were people who were professionally working in the industry. Like it's just so ridiculous. But yeah, and then it just sort of like opportunities kind of started coming to me just from like my Twitter following growing and stuff. And I think also just because all my friends worked in the space, and I was just genuinely there for a good time. Like I had no agenda, I had no career ambitions. I had a whole other career as a musician that I had been working on it was like my life's work. So I was definitely not trying to like schmooze people and like climb any sort of social ladder, because I was just like stoked to have friends that were down to talk to me about basketball, honestly. And then it just sort of organically turned into a job, which is still so weird to me and very cool. But I also am still a full-time musician too. Like I do both. But yeah, I feel like I was laughing about this with my mom, because I'm like, I don't think I could give career advice in the NBA, because I don't think it'd be possible to recreate my path, because I think the only reason I even got the opportunities I did was because I had no agenda at all. And I feel like if I had tried to reverse engineer it, and if I was like, oh, I really want a job in this industry, I don't know if I would have just had like the joie de vivre of like what I was doing enough to get any opportunities to do it, you know?
Yeah, and like maybe would be pressing, maybe
Exactly.
would be trying to manipulate in some way. And you know how it is in LA. It's like
Yeah.
there's a desperation that you can smell, and you can smell it when they see something from you, right?
Yeah.
Like that they have
Exactly.
less, and that they're using that relationship to maybe expand. So do you think if you wanted to be in the NBA media space, you would have ever ended up in the media space?
Yeah, no, that's the thing, is I feel like it only happened because I think it's a good life lesson in some ways, because I think I just genuinely was like getting like very passionate about something, very into it, and like genuinely enjoyed it so much, and just developed real meaningful relationships with people that were just based on enjoying their company and having a mutual interest. And then those relationships just like organically ended up turning into like career opportunities. But I think that you kind of like, it's convinced me honestly that the only way to achieve real success in any arena in life is to just like follow your bliss and like spend time doing the things that make you happy, spend time doing the things that you're passionate about. Don't worry about like having an agenda or like scheming or plotting, or like, oh, I have to talk to this person because they know this person. Like just lead with like, it sounds so corny, but like your heart and your joy, and like the opportunities will come, because I think joy is contagious, and people want to be around people who are like enjoying their lives and like genuine.
Yeah.
So that would be like my best advice to anyone, honestly, in any career, is just like do the things that make you happy, and like follow your happiness, and the other stuff will kind of maybe fall into place. I don't know.
I forgot to ask you about your thoughts on the Kyrie situation.
Well, I think it's pretty telling as far as like how I think the most upsetting thing to me about it was like the lack of sort of like support, obviously, for not just like the Jewish community, but just like anti-hate speech from other players and like coaches and people in the league in general. Like obviously it's not their responsibility to like account for or speak for Kyrie, but the few voices I did hear speak about it were like mostly supporting his right to like say whatever he wants, which I thought was really upsetting. There wasn't a lot of players coming out and being like, like for example, like Osman on the Cavs is a Jewish NBA player. It must have really sucked to have 0 Cleveland Cavaliers come out and be like, hey, one of our teammates is Jewish, and like this really sucks. But I thought LeBron's statement on it at the time was great. Since he's sort of like, he said some stuff since then that like weaken the statement a little bit, because I think he honestly just wants Kyrie to be a Laker, and so he's like trying to like lay the groundwork for that, which I get on a basketball level, and a human level it kind of sucks. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's like we're in such a weird time in history where like people can like say stuff like that and kind of be okay, and it's like, what? Like, can you imagine like even, I don't know, in like the George W. Bush time, like not even like Obama, like before that, like even like that was a pretty dark time in American history. We were like invading Middle Eastern countries and like it was pretty bad. I mean, like George Bush was like very problematic in his own ways. But like, can you imagine someone just saying something like wildly anti-Semitic and like weathering that storm at all? Like it was outrageous, you know? And like a lot of stuff that's said now, I think we got so desensitized to like so much insane, horrifying stuff being like hurtled at us every single day. Like a different crazy thing that Trump was saying, a different mass shooting, a different like potential world war, like every day, that we were sort of just like, oh, like look at your phone, something horrifying. Okay, yeah, now I have to go to Starbucks, so I guess I'll deal with that later. And so I think people are sort of like, I think they have like a shock exhaustion. Like people just are, it's really hard to be outraged all the time. And it's actually not, they shouldn't be. Like it's really bad for you. So I think when something like the Kyrie thing happens, it's just like, oh, there's a fucking Kyrie being Kyrie. And I think people were rightfully really upset. But I think, how can you maintain being upset about something like that for longer than like 2 or 3 days? Like you just can't. There's so much else going on.
Yeah. And it felt like there were these other groups that were mad because quote unquote Kyrie didn't do anything really, you know? And so they're like, oh, Kyrie's being, you know, like drugged through the coals on something that's very insidious, very hateful, but that there wasn't even, I don't know if you saw this, but Jay Williams went on Ryan Clark's podcast and they were basically like, yeah, Kyrie's just trying to figure out his heritage and there's nothing wrong with that. And it's like, no, see, the facts don't support that, right? The facts don't support that the sort of crux of what he's trying to do and getting at and discovering is not something to discover. And that discovery sort of puts other people's history and co-ops that history in a really insidious way.
Yeah. And it was also just like, it's not even just this idea, because I mean, the fundamental idea of, I think what he was like trying to get behind was this idea that the original, that like the Black Israelites and that the original Jews are actually Black and that has been wiped from history. And it's like, that's a conspiracy theory, but like, I understand why that would be intriguing to you if you're someone like Kyrie, who like has historically been drawn to conspiracy theories and drawn to like, oh, people are trying to hide my history from me. The other problem that I think was like the bigger problem was that the actual piece of film / literature that he was promoting had a bunch of other stuff in it, like Hitler wasn't that bad type of stuff. Yeah. So like that stuff comes with it and you don't get to like cherry pick. And the way he reacted to it was super like, well, I'm entitled to do whatever. And you guys are the ones saying that I'm promoting it. I'm just like tweeting it. And that's not a promotion. Like he was just being kind of like, I feel like kind of petulant in his response. And I think that also was part of it. But yeah, I mean, I think like, and also this is like obviously such a complicated, nuanced issue because like, I think a lot of people's responses in Kyrie's defense are pointing at something which is just fundamentally true, which is that like Jewish people, I am one, as much as we have been persecuted and there is racism and hatred against us, we also, the majority of us benefit from white privilege, which is a real thing. So it's not just like cut and dry, like hatefulness and cut and dry prejudice that we're dealing with, because we're also beneficiaries of like very real privilege at the same time. And so I think that like a lot of people who are coming to Kyrie's defense are responding really less to like the actual problem at hand and more to like years and years and years of being victims of racism. And I think that's totally understandable. And I have a lot of empathy for that. So that's why I'm sort of like, it's real complicated, because it's like the people who look like the people who are being, you know, victims of prejudice in this instance are the very same looking people for the most part who have made Black people's lives a living hell. Like that's just white people across the board. I'm not saying Jewish people specifically, but like white people in general. So like, I think that that's understandable that there would be like complicatedness there, and it wouldn't just all be like, oh, kumbaya, we're all in this together because we're all persecuted and we're all like marginalized. Like there's marginalization is obviously like very complicated and there's a lot of nuance there. So I just wish that people like Kyrie were more like willing to actually educate themselves and like not just like watch a YouTube video and think that they have all the answers. And also something that I think is a problem that is born out of internet culture is like reluctance to admit when you're wrong. Like, I think that like when he realized what he promoted, I think he just was too proud to be like, oh, fuck, I fucked up. There's some bad shit in that video, you know?
And let's be honest, like, he didn't watch that movie.
He didn't watch the whole thing. No, he probably watched like a clip from it. So that's the thing is like, we're all human. We all make mistakes. We all maybe like promote something that ends up being problematic. Like, whatever, like, just own it. Just be like, my bad. This was actually really messed up. I actually don't believe this because it's not real. So that's hopefully that's we can at least get that far as a human race, that we can like, if we're gonna keep being dead wrong, at least maybe we can like own it at some point and like be willing to like grow and move on from it and not just like die on every single hill. So
let's talk a little Lakers.
Yeah.
There's a lot, girl. There's a lot going on.
Where to begin?
It feels like the season's already like had a full one, right?
There's been 3 seasons. It's insane.
0-5, and then the sort of like middle zone, and then this crazy dominance from Anthony Davis, which I mean, his nickname is Data Davis, right? That's his nickname.
Yeah.
Close. I didn't think it was gonna work. I didn't think that and maybe it still won't, right?
No, like, I'm not fully convinced yet, but he's been amazing for sure.
So, like, what do you think has changed for the Lakers from going 0-5 and people saying, hey, trade everyone, to and like trade Russ and maybe waive
including
Russ,
me. I definitely said that.
Yeah, trade him or waive him or get rid of him to whatever version that we see now. And what is that version now?
I mean, I think there's honestly so many things that broke right for the version of the Lakers right now where they're winning. I think the most important thing that changed is that Anthony Davis is healthy and he's super motivated and he's playing like absolute peak Anthony Davis. And I think, you know, Coach Ham said in the offseason, like, that's everything for this team. Like, if Anthony Davis is playing like an MVP, it's a completely different story. So I think that's the biggest thing that's changed is he came out at the beginning of the season looking a little like, not like apathetic, but just like he wasn't giving 1,000% like he is now. And he seems like he's just on a tear. Like he's just like has something to prove now, which I think he should have to begin with. But that's 1. 2, I mean, like it sounds inconsequential, but like they did have some players that were out to start the season. Like Dennis Schroeder, I think, is like a good bench option for a point guard. He wasn't available. Thomas Bryant was also out. Like, those aren't going to like change your season, but it is a factor. Like they weren't fully healthy. Obviously the Westbrook thing, I think he was very resistant to coming off the bench in the beginning. He said that it was going to be a cause of injuries because he didn't know how to stay warm. If he was coming off the bench, he was being like a big baby about it. And I do think at first when they brought him off the bench, they kind of tried him in the like having him, you know, start and then immediately come off the floor and then come off the bench. They really tried to be bullish on having him in closing lineups. That really doesn't work. So I think having him just like in a straight up bench role, like not opening, not closing, just right in the middle has been super helpful. And then LeBron is like, you know, finding his rhythm. He had a really rough start to the season and he's looked a lot better in recent games. He had, you know, tweaked his ankle, had a groin injury come back. So like, I think LeBron playing at the level that he's capable of, AD playing at the level he's capable of, and everybody else kind of buying in. I still don't think that's like a championship team personally, because like, I think that they do, if in my ideal world, like they at least need to move Patrick Beverley and a pick, if not Russ. But they're way more fun to watch now and they're not a complete disaster. They're like a play-in team at least. So that's way better than what they were to start the season. It was like some of the most depressing basketball I've ever seen. It was joyless, skillless, like death. It was so bad.
And the amount of air ball brick threes.
So much.
It was
so bad.
So
it was so freaking bad. Yeah.
So bad. You said that you thought the Lakers were in a toxic relationship with Russell Westbrook in the Guardian. You think that's true still?
I mean, I think it's complicated because I think they're in that weird, if I had to describe where they are in their relationship, to keep going with the metaphor I was using in the piece, which is that they're in this long-term relationship that like maybe wasn't very thought out, and like maybe you like have a really fun couple weeks with someone on vacation and then you move in together and then you're like, oh, we actually have like nothing in common. This is kind of a disaster. Like in keeping with that metaphor, I think they've been to couples therapy. I think they're both trying to work it out. I don't think, I mean, for sure it's over after this season. I mean, at the very most, it's going to be one more season. They're not going to bring him back. If they did, they'd be absolutely insane. And I really don't think they will. I still think it would probably be better to trade him. Like, even though it's going better, a $47 million bench player is like not the best case scenario for anyone. Like, he would way prefer to have a bigger role, I think, on a different team. And they would way prefer to have that $47 million broken up into a couple of other bench players that could be equally helpful and impactful, but more of them. So I still think if they could trade him with one pick, I would still say to do it. I think it's going well enough now that if they would have to use 2 picks to trade his contract halfway through the season, yeah, it probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense because it's working enough, and you know they can probably move Beverly and get somebody back. But it's one of those things. It's like, I think I said this in the article. It's like if someone starts doing the dishes, but you don't agree, one of you wants kids and one of you doesn't. It's like, yeah, that's great that you're doing the dishes now, but like we still want completely different things. And I feel like that's the Russell Westbrook thing, is like it's going better, but at the end of the day, they both know it's not right. So I don't know. I'm like sort of, I still think it would be preferable for them to move him, but I understand that it's looking a lot better, and I understand why they wouldn't.
One of the things that was like really prominent chatter was that the Lakers would be really the only asset that they really have. I mean, because right, like Russell Westbrook's not an asset; he's a liability, which is why you have to attach picks to him in order to get rid of him, right? So the only asset that the chatter was that they really could trade was AD, right? AD last 9, 34, 16, 3 with a steal and 3 blocks. But before those 9 games, like he was very suspect play, like you said, apathetic, probably not going to get a lot back for AD at that point.
Which is ridiculous because it's just a few games. I mean, people are so, they have like fly memories. It's like when the Lakers traded everything they traded for him, like people thought that was a lot, but they weren't like, that's preposterous. They're like, this is one of the top 5 best players in the league. Since that time, he's won a championship and then, dealt with some injuries that were, a lot of which I think a lot of the discourse about it is kind of silly because like a lot of it is really bad luck. Like it's kind of like Joel Embiid. Like I feel like Joel Embiid's just had bad injury luck. Like yes, does he need to learn how to fall so that he doesn't like hurt himself? Like yeah, he should probably be better at falling as like an enormous person. But like people were like someone just like hit him in the face and like broke his face bone, like stuff like that. Like AD, someone just like stepped on him. So to some degree, I think it's a little overblown. The like the Anthony Davis like speculation about like can he stay healthy. But I get it. But I think there was like some luck involved there as well.
You think AD and Embiid are cursed with the injury bug?
I mean, shit, man. Like they kind of feel a little cursed because there's, like I said, there's just so much bad luck involved. But also, yeah, I think when you're that big, there's just like bodies aren't really supposed to be that tall. So just things go wrong. I mean, I think any big man in the league is going to deal with a certain level of injury, especially to the like lower half of the body, because that's just a lot of weight. And like that's why people worry about Zion is like it's just a lot of weight like on the upper half of your body to be running around with, like pounding like your feet. You're going to have foot and ankle issues when you have like that much weight and height on your body. But I don't know, LeBron's like 6'9" and he stayed pretty damn healthy. So I don't know.
Different dudes too, right? Like
yeah.
Some of the discourse around LeBron versus AD is like work ethic related. And so you wonder what the switch has flipped like between the AD that we've seen in the last 2 years and this version of AD, like you said, hyper motivated. Like, why do you think that light switch has gone on, do you think that that's a Darvin Ham related switch flipper? Like, does Frank Vogel bring this side out at AD, do you think?
I think like Darvin Ham deserves a ton of credit because from everything I've heard from like inside the organization and from them themselves, like they have a great relationship. I think they have like a great relationship, not just as player coach, but like as people. I think they have a lot of mutual respect for each other. Darvin is awesome. Like I mean, I went to like 5 home games when I was working on that Russ piece. And every minute I spent around Darvin, I was just like, oh yeah, like I would literally trust this man with my life. I don't know him at all, but he's just like has such a presence about him. He has such a like calming, like paternal presence. And I think that works really well for some players. Like, and I think it's really resonated with AD. Like AD is a pretty sensitive soul, I think. And I think Darvin is like just communicated really well with him. So I do think he deserves some credit. I mean, I also think like I feel like AD is kind of in like his MJ, I took that personally era. Like you had Bill Simmons speculating after the first few games of the season, like, should the Lakers even bother trading AD? Is he worth anything? Could they even get like a fraction of what Utah got for Rudy Gobert? You know, like he was saying stuff like that. And at a certain point, I mean, like you should take that personally. You know, you should be like, excuse me, I'm Anthony fucking Davis. Like, lest you forget.
Yeah.
So I think it's a combo. I think it's like Darvin Ham's, I think, a really good coach, and especially on the personnel side of things. I mean, on the X's and O's side of things, I feel like, yeah, he's made some questionable decisions at times, but I think the most important thing about being a coach is like how you deal with personalities and egos, and especially in a situation like the Lakers where there's 3 enormous personalities, like enormous stars, like that's really difficult to deal with. So I think for sure credit to him, and I think AD also has just started to be like have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder about it.
Yeah, I remember one of the biggest videos that I did when the podcast first started was, "Is AD soft?" And I
Yeah.
remember
It's been a storyline for sure. It really has.
Yeah.
And it's a valid question.
And this was like maybe 2 years ago. And I
Yeah.
remember in the postseason when they played the Suns, it was like right before that, he was like, "There's just a lot of people calling me soft right now."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you can tell that these guys read a lot and watch a lot and absorb a
Mhm.
lot. And you talk about Darvin Ham as a coach and what he's done from just an X's and O's perspective. Like, this is probably, Anthony Davis said this is his 3rd or 4th best stretch in his career. But I went through his career game by
It's gotta be
game.
the best stretch of his
It
career, I
is. It's
think.
the best 9-game stretch. And it, like, he's never averaged 34, 16, 3 with 1 steal and 3 blocks.
Yeah.
For 46% from 3, 65% from the field. His best stretch besides that was 2018. He had 5 40-point games. He averaged 33, 15, and 2 with 3 steals and 2.5 blocks. And listen, like, it's just a different version. It's almost like
Yeah.
breaking the wheel in terms of how offense is being run. Like, you have maybe one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the NBA. So, like, let's
Yeah.
just not shoot threes anymore.
Yeah. For sure. And I think it's funny too, because it's almost like when they let that go, like when they kind of just accepted like that's not our team identity, the shots started falling too. Like their jump shots have been better and their shooting percentage has gone up from 3, because I think first of all, like obviously the percentage is going to go up as you take less of them because they were taking so many, and like you can't make like making 9 out of 10 threes is a lot harder than making like 1 out of 3. But I also think, yeah, they kind of like accepted and leaned into like AD just like punishing people, which is great. I don't know. It worries me a teeny bit as far as sustainability. It's a long season, and that's a lot of wear and tear his body's taking. He's taking a ton of fouls and just like a lot of abuse. So it does worry me, but he looks like he's in great shape. So I don't know. We'll see.
When you saw them beat the Milwaukee Bucks fully healthy,
Oh God, that was so cool. What
like,
a great game.
meaningful scale for you. Like, to me, as someone who hates the Lakers, right? Like, I've had on my whole life as a Portland Trailblazer fan.
Yeah.
It's just embedded in me, and like wishing for them to fail at all, like stops along the road
Yeah.
as a Kobe, right? But I was like, wow, that's a meaningful win.
Yeah. I think it was their best win since the bubble, personally. Since the game where they won the championship, I think that was like their best win. Because LeBron looked awesome. AD looked insane. The team chemistry looked great. And it was a really formidable opponent. Like I still, even though the Celtics are on a tear, like I still have the Bucks winning the championship this year. They were at home in Milwaukee. It was the first game of like a long road trip. And there was so much chatter around the league, like after the Pacers loss, which was like so depressing and kind of looked like, okay, maybe it was fool's gold that they won all these games in a row. Like maybe they really are shitty. To come back from that Pacers loss and have that Milwaukee win, like it's the most meaningful win I can think of in a really long time. It was, I think the season, it could have been the season really. It sounds hyperbolic, but like had they lost that game, especially in like the kind of fashion that they lost the Pacers game, like that was like a wire to wire victory. I mean, I think Milwaukee might have come back and was up by like 1 or 2 points at a certain point, but for the most part, the Lakers were winning that entire game. It looked very decisive. And yeah, it was just like a super statement win.
Yeah, I agree. If they continue to play well, Lakers,
Yeah.
I'm giving you 3, 4 sort of outcomes in terms of betting.
Okay. Yeah.
AD MVP.
Okay.
LeBron MVP. Darvin Ham Coach of the Year. Lakers to come out of the West. Which of those 4 outcomes would you place your money on?
For sure, AD MVP. Like if AD keeps playing like this the rest of the year, he has to end up in like the top 3 MVP voting. I don't think LeBron really has a chance at MVP at this point. I don't think he's the most valuable player on the Lakers right now. Like the reason they're winning is because AD is playing like this. LeBron's been great the last few games, but like he's not the best player on the team at the moment. And that kind of needed to be true for the last few years. And AD just like wasn't stepping up to make that possible. But LeBron is 38 this month. Yeah. So like he should not be the best player. Like a 38-year-old is not going to be the best player in a championship team, just like point blank period. So, and he knows that. Darvin Ham is Coach of the Year. Like, I mean, I think he deserves to be mentioned in the conversation, but I think as long as you have players like AD and LeBron, like it would be really rough to get that kind of nod. I don't think anyone, especially with LeBron being like a coach on the floor kind of player, I don't think any of his coaches are ever going to get that kind of credit. Them coming out of the West, I mean, the West looks pretty vulnerable at the moment. Like a lot of the teams that were supposed to be kind of juggernauts are not looking like juggernauts. That being said, like I would bet on AD being an MVP before I would bet on them coming out of the West.
I saw Rob Pelinka by himself at the Phil Knight Classic, Phil Knight Invitational, nice. Just like scouting, just like by himself on a random baseline. And I was like, who are you scouting, my guy? You have no picks. You have no picks. Yeah. But were you surprised like how fast he got extended given the drama?
God, shocked. Yeah, I mean, surprised, I guess the Lakers make a lot of questionable front office choices, so nothing ever really surprises me. But yeah, that's insane that he got extended. Like there was nothing at that time that should have given them that faith in him. I heard Jeannie say something about how like she wanted to show Darvin that like he wasn't going to have a lot of like changes. Like there was going to be continuity. Like it's like we're building a team. Like this is the coach. We're dedicated to you. This is the GM. We're dedicated to you. Like wanting to like create like a stable culture. But man, Rob Pelinka, like, I mean, even like getting LeBron, quite frankly, the Lakers front office had nothing to do with that. I don't think. I think LeBron just wanted to play for the Lakers, wanted to play in LA. They looked like a disaster, and he kind of just didn't care because he just like, I'm LeBron James and I can make anyone good and I'll like come make you good. It's fine. But like, yeah, I don't even, they built the championship roster completely by accident. They wanted a big 3. They wanted to get Kawhi. Kawhi pulled like a crazy bait and switch on them. And then all that was left was like a bunch of really competent role players that happened to like buy in and be great. But that was not like a stroke of genius, that championship roster. That was like dumb luck. And then they blew it up, even though it won a championship. So like, there's like zero evidence that Rob Pelinka knows what the fuck he's doing. It's wild that he got extended.
I have no faith in him. That's actually
No,
like the best thing as a Laker hater. The best thing that could happen
it's Rob
is
Pelinka.
Rob Pelinka being there. I think probably the best thing that he does is scouting, like finding Caruso,
Yeah.
finding Austin Reeves, finding guys that I mean, when you have no draft picks, like you have to figure out.
No, they're amazing at scouting like undrafted players, but I don't even know if you can give Rob Pelinka credit for that. I feel like that's just their like there are other people obviously in the front
Yeah.
office who get tasked with that, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously he was Kobe's guy and like obviously Kobe means a lot to the Laker franchise, so I'm sure that's part of the loyalty there, but sheesh. Yeah. I mean, wouldn't it be great if we could all fail up to that degree? Like just in the middle of like an 0 and whatever 9 losing streak or something, like just like get extended for the next 3 or 4 years or whatever they gave him. Like pretty
Nothing
well.
like being a good-looking white male. Just nothing
Yeah,
like
it
it, you
really,
know?
yeah, if you're like a middle to upper class white dude who's even relatively good looking, the world is truly your oyster. Like,
Just so what happens at the deadline, do you think?
uh, so I think that they're gonna do something because I think that's why they waived Matt Ryan is to open up that roster spot. Um, I don't think it's gonna be Russ. In my heart of hearts, I really think like the fact that it's gone better is enough for them to justify not encumbering themselves to get rid of his contract. Would I love it to be Russ? Yeah, I still would. I don't care that he's been playing better. I still really, really hope that they trade him. What I think is more likely is that they trade Patrick Beverley and maybe Kendrick Nunn and like a pick instead of 2 picks and get a couple, helpful guys back that aren't like huge difference makers, but that are certainly like Patrick Beverley is like not even really a basketball player right now. He's just like a cheerleader. I don't know. He's like not impactful in a basketball way at all. And Kendrick Nunn has been like god awful. So yeah, I guess if they can like make fringe moves like that and then just at least stand pat on the Russ coming off the bench thing, I think that's probably their preference. I guess I could see them doing nothing just because they've done that several times. But I think that they're going to do something. I think that's why they opened up the roster spot.
If there's one player out there or 2 players that you want, who are they?
I mean, I've heard rumors about Terry Rozier. That would be awesome. I think Charlotte's probably going to tank sooner rather than later, just because like they've been pretty bad, and Wembanyama is like so generational. I'm surprised actually that there aren't more teams obviously tanking already. I guess because maybe Adam Silver kind of like put down the hammer on that is the only reason why people are being more subtle. But like I thought this season was going to be just like a tank fest. So yeah, like Terry Rozier would be cool. I mean, I'm still down for the Buddy Hield, Miles Turner situation. Like, I think both of those guys would be really helpful, but they didn't look great when the Lakers played the Pacers, which probably didn't really help their case for like trade for me. I mean, personally, like my ideal situation that actually feels realistic is like I think the Timberwolves really miss Patrick Beverley. I think they have like no culture anymore, and I think he was like a bigger part of that than they thought. That's actually the piece that I just wrote just about the
Ooh.
Timberwolves. So my ideal situation slash what I think is likely is like the Timberwolves are kind of the only team that like would really give up anything good for Patrick Beverley, I think, because he just was like important to them in a way that he isn't obviously to anyone else. So maybe just like some fringe guys on the Wolves that are helpful and can shoot like I don't know, like Austin Rivers, Bryn Forbes, and somebody, yeah, just like a couple like kind of competent role guys from the Wolves for Pat Bev. And maybe I guess a pick if they have to. I think that would be like the most realistic case scenario that would actually be pretty good.
Yeah, nice. Well, you mentioned we talked about you got discovered in basketball spaces through NBA Twitter. What like just finally, I guess, what's your thought on if it goes away? Where do we go?
I don't know. It'd be such a bummer. I mean, like, obviously we were all weirdly like eulogizing Twitter like 2 weeks ago, and it's still here. Super awkward. It's like when you say goodbye to someone at a party and then you like have to come back and wait for your Uber. It's like, oh, I guess we're all still here.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know, because I think the thing about Twitter that's like so special, it would have to be another app that's just like the exact same app, but with a different name pretty much. because it's like it's the fastest social media. Like it's basically instantaneous reactions to things, and that's what lends itself to like sports discourse so well. Because like you could just instantaneously react to what you're seeing, and everyone else can too. And so your feed is just like when someone does like a crazy dunk, like when AD dunked on 2 people the other night, my whole timeline was like, oh my God, Anthony Davis, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And if you try to do that on like Instagram or TikTok or anything, it's like, it's just completely different formats. So I would say either it would be replaced by something very similar, or I don't know, do we go back to like chat rooms and like fucking like weird, like, yeah, I don't even know, like message boards, like it's bleak. Because I think Twitter's great. Like it's kind of a nightmare, but like in a good way. It's a nightmare because it's just like so democratic. Like you just can say whatever immediately, and that's kind of cool. I mean, I wish I had an owner that cared about like racism and homophobia and misogyny. Like it could be improved in those ways, and it's a feeder system for a lot of harassment. But as far as being someone who talks about sports, like yeah, it's the GOAT app for sure. There's
I think so
none are
too.
close.
And I'm like, there are people on that app that I love on Twitter, but I don't, when I log off, it's not like I remember.
100%.
Like I'm
Also,
like,
there,
oh yeah, like, oh yeah, this person. I'm not gonna go to another app and be like, you know who I need to find is
Yeah.
like Nick's Tape 99. Well, it has been a fun chat. I could go on and on. You got to
Oh my
get
God, I
to
know.
T-Mobile to
Yeah, I
find.
gotta go back to phone.
You know,
God.
Claire revealed to us that she lost her cell phone, so she's been naked. You know, no cell phone this entire time
Just
without
sitting in front of a laptop.
just getting iMessage on the Apple MacBook. So
Yeah.
we appreciate you. Check Claire out. You can find her on Twitter if it still exists.
Yeah.
Claire with an E, CLAIRE MPLS. Is that Minneapolis?
It is. Yeah, it's from when I lived in Minneapolis.
Yeah, Claire, Minneapolis, MPLS. Give her a follow. Also, check out her band, Tiny Deaths, Orgasm Reference on Spotify. Very dope. She writes for The Guardian. She's here to tell us a bunch of funny stuff online. So follow her.
Amazing.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so cool to like actually be able to talk to you face to face.
Yeah, women in the space are few and far between.
Especially like, solidarity.
Funny ones and ones that are like gonna give anti-Rudy Gobert takes. So
oh my God, always count on me. Check out The Guardian next week for more anti-Rudy Gobert takes.
Oh, I can't wait for that. Thanks so much.
Thank you.